Today we're talking about the Drum Corps International Rulebook. Oh yes, everyone's favorite topic. We had 15 new rules proposed this year for the DCI Rules Congress, so we're going to go through each of them in order, starting with... So this rule proposes that a corps can have one solo instrument that is not brass or percussion, which I honestly thought that was already a rule because the troopers have been doing it forever. We got a cello, harmonica, guitar, and there's some other corps that are doing that too. Unfortunately, DCI does not post their rule book anywhere for people to actually read it, obsessive people like me that want to read the whole rule book. So I can't tell you what the rule currently is right now. Compose a comment if you know where I can find this rule book. I really want to read it. But I am definitely a fan of the non-percussion and non-brass instruments. I think they sound very cool when used properly. And DCI thought so too, because they voted to pass this rule. And even though I don't get an actual vote, I'm still gonna vote for this video. So I also vote to pass this rule. The performance order of a DCI show, that is set by the show host, and they will usually choose to put the corps that place worse in recent years, they'll put them at the beginning, or the corps that place towards the top, they will usually put them at the end of the show. And this has a massive advantage for the corps that placed higher, being able to go on late in the night at every single show. Because one, it's cooler out at nighttime, which definitely helps in the summer heat. You also don't have the sun right in your eyes. And there's also a bigger crowd, a bigger turnout for the groups that go on at the end. And probably most importantly is that the groups that go on later, they have more time to rehearse earlier in the day. There's more time before they gotta leave to go to the show. So this rule proposes that no matter what corps you're in, whatever place you got the previous year, you will have at least one show that you will go on last. So you'll get all those advantages one time. And there's also like a part 2 to this rule. It seems like a completely different rule, but it says that the corps that perform before the intermission at the super long shows, they get the option to do critique by video with the judges. Instead of going to the judge meeting at the end, so the staff and corps have to wait around all day, they can just do a video critique. So DCI, there actually wasn't a vote on this. The rule got withdrawn before it got moved to the Rules Congress. Most of these rules were actually withdrawn, and I don't really know what that means. I don't go to the Rule Congress. Maybe because this one, it isn't really a rule, it's just kind of like a guideline or something. Like it wouldn't actually go in the rule book if this got passed. But I'm still gonna say that it got rejected because I like doing that buzzer sound in the video. However, if I got a vote on this, I would pass the first part of the rule, the going on last, because I think that makes it more fair. I don't know about the video critique part. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll just say passed overall. Passed by EMC. The front ensemble, or pit, they get a designated area to set up all their stuff for the show, and this rule proposes to add an extra 5 feet to that performance space, giving them more room for activities. Steve Rondinero and Dan Potter brought up an interesting point about this rule.
Carlos said, I'm not in favor of this at all because of the traffic jam it would create on that front sideline.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room in a lot of stadiums. Those front sidelines, corps coming, corps going. Yeah. You know how fast we got to switch them out.
And another 5 feet.
And yeah, I get that argument. You don't want 2 pit carts battling it out up in the front trying to get into the space. And also, the pit is allowed to push back onto the field a little bit. If they need more space, they can just go in that direction. You just make sure you don't write drill all the way up into the front of there. So DCI voted to reject this one, and I also vote to reject this one. For safety reasons, the on-field judges, they cannot walk more than 6 feet onto the field so they don't interfere with the drill. And this rule would propose that those judges, they can't even go on the field at all. In fact, they have to stay 15 feet in front of the sideline. Now, back in my day, the judges, they were allowed to go all the way out on the field, wherever they want. They had free reign to roam around and evaluate whatever they wanted to. But then they changed it to move the judges all the way up to the front, and I've honestly never been a fan of this rule because I don't think you can really evaluate as well if you're super far away from people that are way in the back sidelines. Like if the snares have a bunch of inner beats and you're all the way up in the front, you can't really tell if it's clean or not. And I mean, I get the safety concern that there have definitely been issues with judges getting run over by people doing the drill and causing injuries to either the judges themselves or even the members that run into them, causing pileups or whatever. However, on the flip side, having the judges out on the field, that can help with some safety concerns. Some of you are probably familiar with this video where the dude's snare drum fell off, and yeah, if the judge wasn't out there to pick it up and run it back to the guy, then yeah, someone would have definitely tripped over this drum. It would have not been good. And also, there was a show that I was marching where someone like fell down and got hurt and couldn't get off the field by themselves, and there was some on-field judges were in the area. They went and helped that member get off the field so that they didn't further hurt themselves or hurt anyone around them. So this kind of sorts out the balances of risks, sort of, a little bit. So DCI rejected this rule, and I absolutely reject this rule to move the judges even further away. In fact, I would prefer we go back to the old rule where we just let the judges go all the way out on the field. So currently there is one percussion judge at DCI shows that stays on the field the whole time, and by field I mean 6 feet onto the field. That's all they're allowed to go. So this rule would add a second percussion judge that would sit up in the press box and would evaluate like the whole percussion ensemble throughout the whole show. And then these two drum scores, they would get averaged together for the final drum score. And I am all in for this rule. I think there's just so much going on in the percussion section. Like, you really do need 2 judges just to analyze all the different things happening all the way in the back of the field, all the way in the front. It's a lot of stuff going on. From 2014 to 2018, this was actually the case where they had 2 percussion judges, and they changed it for some reason. And well, they're not changing it back because DCI rejected this one. But if I got a vote, I would pass it. I like 2 drum judges. So I'm pretty sure that the last rule we just talked about, that probably got rejected because of this rule. This rule says that if we add a second judge to one caption, then we have to add a second judge to every other caption. And yeah, I kind of get that. Like, if the drums get a second judge, then the brass and color guard would be like, well, wait a minute, why don't we get a second judge too? We're important. So this would make the entirety of all the panels double panels, which adds a lot of judges and would cost quite a bit more money to hire them all. But I don't know, I kind of disagree with this one because I think it should be on a case-by-case basis for each caption. Like, in percussion land, there's just so many different skill sets going on, like what a vibraphone player is doing compared to what a bass drum player is doing. Like, yeah, they're both percussion instruments, but it's like a totally different set of skills that needs to be evaluated by just one person. And I don't think that gap in skill sets is quite as drastic in the other sections. I do think having a second percussion judge does make it more fair for that caption. And also, we already don't have equality in the captions because both the GEs and the music analysis, they have double panel judges and nobody else does. So DCI voted to reject this one, and I also vote to reject this one. So I'm grouping both of these rules together because they're kind of similar. They both just basically add some gear into like the sound system for the cores to use to make their electronic setup go easier and more smooth. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that familiar with how the electronic setups work for these groups, but I think if there's something that can be done to make it easier for people, then sure, why not? Let's add it in there. Well, DCI didn't think so because they rejected it, but I'll say pass, even though I kind of don't understand it. Most drum corps will have their members sign a contract when they're offered a spot, and this contract makes sure that they can't quit after May 15th to go join a different drum corps. So like a top drum corps, they can't go poaching members off of the lower drum corps, let's say if someone bails right before the season starts. So this rule proposal will eliminate that date, May 15th. So whenever you sign the contract, no matter what day it was, then you cannot go join another corps at all. So let's say you go to like an audition camp for one of the bottom corps in November and you get offered a spot, you sign a contract, but then in December, the blue coats, they hit you up and they're like, hey, we got a spot for you. You can't go do it because you signed the contract already, even though it's months in advance before tour. And I absolutely hate that idea because the members, they're paying so much. It's like $5,000 to march a drum corps. They should have the freedom to choose wherever they want to march, especially if it's, you know, very early in advance. Now I can see maybe moving that date, May 15th, up a little bit, like maybe like a couple weeks or a month, because that is right before a move-in. So if somebody bails or a bunch of people bail on a drum corps, then yeah, you have to like rewrite a lot of stuff because shows are already being designed by that point. But I don't think you should eliminate the date entirely, all right? You need people to have the freedom to choose what they want to do here. DCI rejected it. I also rejected it. The max amount of performers a drum corps can have is 165, and most of the top corps will also have some alternates, as in extra people that come on tour with the group that can fill in case somebody gets injured. Now, the issue this causes is these alternate spots. These are extra people that are not performing with the corps. They could be filling out spots in other corps that don't have max rosters, so it is taking away members from other corps. However, there is no rule against how many alternates a drum corps can bring on tour with them, and this rule proposes that the 165 members, that includes alternates, so the amount of members on tour has to be no more than 165, no matter if they're performing or not. And according to this article on General Effect Media, there are instances of corps carrying significant amounts of alternates during spring training, and then cutting quite a few of them prior to going back on the road, leading to those participants to either scramble to find a spot last minute, wait potentially for a call from that corps, or just not march at all. And yeah, that's like really awful and terrible that is happening. It's a weird strategy for a drum corps to just hoard a bunch of alternates like that. That is not keeping the educational values of the activity in mind. Yeah, I've honestly never been a fan of alternates. Like, I would never have been an alternate if I was offered. I would way rather just go perform with a different drum corps. I think it's a better value for your money and a better education. So yeah, I'm honestly kind of a fan of just abolishing alternates. Just keep the total membership at 165, and if someone gets injured, then you just close the hole in, right? That's what corps have been doing for years. Well, DCI, they rejected the idea, but I would pass it. I like it. A drum corps will make a write-up about their show that will be handed out to the judges before the show starts, and that basically tells them what the show is about so that the judges can adjudicate it as accurately as possible. I honestly wish they gave this write-up to the audience too, because for some of these shows I honestly feel kind of lost as it's going on. But this rule proposal would add structure to the write-up. I guess right now you could just write it however you feel like you want to, but they want to add like guidelines to how you present the write-up. So this is another one that I'm not too familiar with. Like, I've never done a show write-up or received a show write-up, so yeah, I honestly don't really have an opinion on this one. I don't know if it would help or hurt or not. DCI rejected this proposal, and I'm not going to vote. I'm abstaining from this one. So these two are the same exact proposal. It's adding a music award. It's just one has a name for it and one doesn't. This would just create an extra award that is handed out during the final ceremony for whatever corps scored the highest in overall music, like all the music captions added together. So right now there are 5 different specialty caption awards that get handed out, but best music is not one of them, and I say, why not? Let's add this in there. Everyone likes awards. We should recognize greatness. DCI rejected it. This is another one that was withdrawn. I don't know if it's just because it's not a rule. It's like just a thing that's gonna happen. But if I had a vote, I would absolutely say yes. Let's pass this one. There are 2 general effect judges that adjudicate the entire show package, both music and visually, and the GE1 and GE2 judges have different backgrounds. One is in music and the other judge is a background in visual. Now this rule would separate the GE captions to a GE music and GE visual, so they would specifically look for things on both of those sides of the spectrum. Now this is how the scoring used to be. It was GE music and GE visual, but then they just changed it to merge it all into one, so it's just GE. Like, you're watching all of it, the whole thing. And this is another rule I honestly don't know if that would be better or worse or not matter if they separated the GE captions. I'm not a GE judge. I don't really know much about it. DCI, they rejected this, and I am gonna not vote again. The current rule for legal percussion instruments are all acoustic percussion membrane and keyboard instruments. So technically, percussion instruments like woodblocks or cowbells or even cymbals, those are not legal instruments. I don't think I've ever seen a drum corps show that didn't use any cymbals at all. So everybody should have been disqualified. We are all violating the rules. So yeah, this rule proposal just cleans up the terminology to say that any percussion instrument can be used, you know, because that's what everyone's doing anyways. DCI voted to pass this one. I vote to pass this one, obviously. So those were all the rule proposals. However, if I was allowed to propose rules, I would propose one more. So I've talked about this in other videos. Right now, the age out, like the year you can't march anymore because you're too old, is 21 years old, and I think we should up that to 25. To be honest, I don't think there should be an age out because you're never too old to receive an education, but I think the first baby step to this would just be upping the age out a little bit, so I think 25 is a fair year. And yes, there is DCI all age class, but that's way, way different from World and Open class because you're not going on tour for the whole summer. Compose a comment if you agree or disagree with some of these rules. Click on this video right here for more drum corps content, and have a good morning.